All right. Welcome everybody to the first edition of NEXTEpisode, the podcast that discusses sustainable technology solutions. And we have a very special first guest, Fabio Fritelli. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much, first of all, for inviting, because I've been looking at some of your previous podcasts, and they're extremely insightful. So thank you very much for inviting.
Yeah, well, we hope to do the same thing for the next episode. Of course, we're going to talk a lot about sustainable technology solutions. Maybe, first of all, a small personal introduction. You are the CEO of NEXTChem, and of course, in a role for about a year.
Yeah.
But you've been with MAIRE Group for a decade,
yeah.
or around a decade. First as CEO of Met Development, and after that CFO, Chief Financial Officer for MAIRE Group.
Yes.
Okay, so it's a very broad experience in the group.
You said it all. My background is a financial background. I started in the banking sector, then moved to the industry, then back into insurance, then into telecommunications. So I've done quite a number of jobs in my life. But I joined this group 11 years ago now. It was July 2014, so slightly more than 11 years ago. And you're right. I've entered the group by looking at numbers. And then when you start looking at numbers, you start, willing to know more about what's behind numbers. And I started with Met Development, which is, as you know, the third leg of the group, the company that is requested to put some equity. We call it skin in the game for the sake of facilitating certain initiatives. And that was the first attempt to look deeper into the concrete initiatives that our clients decide to pursue. And after that, I had to move on with the role of a chief financial officer of the group. And then after that, I've always been quite curious about this energy transition journey, because it's going to be a long journey. And last year in October, but full time from March this year, I started this new role.
Okay, well, maybe also for new listeners, a very brief introduction of me. I'm Mark. I'm responsible for the product marketing in NEXTChem. We used to do STAMI talks that focused on fertilizer technology, but now this is a more broader podcast that also focuses on all sustainable energy technologies. So we have a lot to talk about. So I think this is a very good podcast to start off, to give, let's say, an overarching view of the energy transition. What is NEXTChem? On what different fields does the energy transition play out? And of course, what role can NEXTChem play in that as a part of that?
Sure.
So maybe to start off, for listeners that do not know NEXTChem, can you give us some? You started with numbers, you already said. So can you give some numbers on NEXTChem in terms of amount of staff, amount of countries that you're active in?
No doubt. Let me start. Maybe then we go to the number of people and to the products we have. But let me start with the three business lines we are into. The first, and the one you are definitely most familiar with, is what we call sustainable fertilizers business line, which is also the business line with only one legal entity. All the others have more legal entities. So STAMI Carbon is the leader and the only representative of this business line. It is the most relevant at this point in time in terms of revenue contribution to the rest of NEXTChem. It is the most mature. It is the one with the name STAMI Carbon, which has a long history with our clients and in the industry. Notwithstanding that, as all businesses, it has its own challenges to be pursued, and we will get to that later on. But then we have next to it another business line which is called sustainable energy vectors, which has to do with everything that allows people to move. So we tend to identify the fertilizers with the need to feed the population, and we need to identify the energy vectors with the need of the population to move. So we're talking of vectors such as hydrogen, methanol, sustainable aviation fuel, all those vehicles derived from hydrogen that will help people moving in a more sustainable way. And then we have a third business line, which is dedicated to the circular economy. So the ability to give a second chance, a second or a third or a fourth chance to materials which are already in the environment.
Okay.
So the three business lines have three different end markets. The first two, so the sustainable fertilizers and the energy vectors, have one very relevant link in common, which is ammonia.
Yeah.
We will get to that, which is not only a fertilizer but also an energy vector in potentially growing demand going forward. So we will get to that later on. But yes, in these three families, as I was saying, there are a number of legal entities. So the sustainable fertilizer is represented by Stamicarbon,
Yes.
but the energy vectors is represented by a number of companies. We have KT Tech, which is the spin-off of the technology side of the business of KT.
Mm-hmm.
We have Conser, which is an entity we bought a few years ago. We have a number of other smaller entities, TPI, which is a German-based company. I don't pretend, all of us to know all the entities we have, because there are many. On the other side, in the circular business, we have a sub-holding, which is called Circular, to recall...
With a Q?
Yes, with a Q, to recall the business they are in. But then we have another entity which is proving to be quite successful, which is called MAIRE Chemical. MAIRE Chemical is taking care of the gasification of waste for the sake of recycling the non-recyclable waste.
Okay.
And then we have MAIREplast, which is, on the other hand, the company who is mechanically recycling waste, which is the first step of the evolution chain of how to recycle plastic.
So it's chemical recycling and
Mechanical
recycling.
And the chemical can be the gasification of waste. So we have a couple of other initiatives. One is called MAIRE Mono. It's a company we bought, again, a few years ago, because one of the way in which NEXTChem has been structured is by making, so enlarging the scope of the business, but also buying companies when we had to start from scratch.
Yeah.
And MAIRE Mono, which is one of the companies who's currently deploying its first industrial scale pilot plant, which seems to be a contradiction, but it's they have developed a technology to recycle plexiglass.
Okay.
Which seems to be a niche business, but it's not so niche if you think that the rear lights of all cars are made with plexiglass.
There's a lot of plexiglass in the road, and not just in cars probably, but also a lot of other applications.
So a number of initiatives in a number of smaller, if compared to Stamicarbon or to KT Tech companies, but all of them has a precise target, a precise end markets, and precise technologies to bet on.
So NEXTChem overall is focused on the energy transition
Yeah.
as a whole, but being energy transition is such a broad container term that people use, that you really focus on specific attributes of the energy transition.
Absolutely.
And if I understand you correctly, then this is partly, especially in the fertilizers and energy vector business, that's focusing on industrial, let's say, chemical sites.
Yes.
But plastic recycling sounds more consumer driven. Is that true? Do you also sell to consumers directly, or
No.
is that also a industrial?
No, we're talking of still something which deals with industrial players. So downstream to the mechanical or chemical recycling. In the case of chemical recycling, you end up in the same end markets of the first two business lines. So
Okay.
you end up with methanol, hydrogen, or ethanol. So you end up with final clients who are the big oil companies or the majors that then will transform these vectors into other products. In the case of mechanical recycling, we are in the first step of transformation. So the final product is a granule that is reutilized by other industrial players to end in final products.
To remake car parts or whatever type of plastic that
And
is
in
needed.
that case, the bet we made a few years ago is to add what we have now registered as upcycling. So being able to add some chemistry by compounding the plastic to give it better characteristics and be able to be used in the car industry or in other higher value-added industries.
Okay. And you already mentioned in terms of the other two business lines that ammonia is sort of on the interface between the two. So that's a very clear some synergy between those two business lines. Are there other, except from the fact that they are all, of course, linked to the energy transition, do they also have synergies in between them? Because you also mentioned, all right, they have the same, let's say, final clients is chemical industry or still oil and gas companies as well. How do they synergize?
Well, it is not unusual to have technology offerings which are able to offer the client an end-to-end solution where we have two or more technologies we have developed to be offered to the client. The catalytic partial oxidation is being used in these very days for an offer we have made to a Canadian client, which is also producing AdiBlue, so DEF. And we are selling both technologies. One is serving an efficient use of the CO2, and the other is used for the product itself. But there are many examples like this.
And then DEF is the diesel exhaust fluid.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in a way, the other advantage of having a large base of technologies and products is that you are really able to offer the client the end-to-end solution, and more than that, to exploit commercial synergies you would not otherwise exploit.
Yeah.
So we have a very close cooperation between the three business lines, which are headed by Pejman on the sustainable fertilizers, by Andrea Vena on the energy vectors, and by Massimo Diamato on the circular economy. And I tend to cooperate with all of them, given the fact that the first two business lines have more points in common, more with these two. Whenever there is an offer where we have a blank sheet of paper in front of us, then I call both of them to understand what we can co-sell to the client.
Yeah. And the integration of all of those technologies, so the end-to-end example that you give, is that also the biggest advantage that NextChem has?
Well, definitely it's let me go back to my financial background. I have been meeting with a lot of investors, stakeholders in general, but investors in particular in the past. And if I go back 5 years, let me say that 5 years we were at the point in time where the world on the verge of the pandemic thought that the energy transition was something we had to do. It was very emotional. And we went all the way to the concept of a very quick shift from a fossil fuel-based economy to a green economy, as if it
almost
would have
overnight.
happened overnight. And there were a number of companies, the so-called pure plays, those who had the best technology for the hydrogen management, those who had the best technology for the transformation of hydrogen into sustainable aviation fuel through methanol. But then the energy transition is not going to be a one-shot. It's not going to happen through a single vector. It's happening on a much longer time frame, and it's happening through so many solutions that having the access to a number of technology and a wider and broader views played a lot in our favor as a business model. So nowadays we keep on saying we have a lot of competitors, but very few peers.
Okay. In the sense that you don't have a lot of competitors that can offer a broad range of technologies.
Yeah. Those who can offer a broader range of technologies are all coming from a process engineering background. Technip, for instance, is a similar company. So the ability to be able to face the client and offer a number of solutions, not necessarily your solutions. They could also involve the solution coming from a third party.
Okay.
Because the final goal is to be able to offer the client the entire solution. So in this case, NextChem has been performing better than some of its competitors, again, not peers, because we have been able to move from one vector to the other, from one geography to the other, from one offering to the other.
Does that also mean, because you briefly touched upon in the introduction that NEXTChem is part of MAIRE, and that we also have Tecnimont and KT as EPC contractors, and MedDev in the middle to put some skin in the game, in your words. Does that mean that you can also work with other contractors?
That's a very good point. I mean, the principle we set from the very beginning is that we need to be able to be independent one from each other, but at the same time, if the market requires so, we need to extract the synergies within the group. And this is working well, because we are at a point in time in the energy transition where clients tend to prefer a single point of responsibility. Let me put it bluntly. Few years back, or even today, if Stami Carbon wants to sell its urea technology to a client, the client knows he can buy the technology and then have the best EPC contractor, according to whatever terms he defines the best EPC contractor, bidding to execute under that technology. When you move to new technology, let's stay on Stami Carbon, but we can do the same example for all the other technologies. Ammonia, which is the new venture of Stami Carbon. We are not able to show references, especially for certain developments of ammonia. If we're talking about blue ammonia or green ammonia, there are not references on the market we can show. And then the ability to visit the client by telling him, listen, I have a new technology. I know that this technology works, and I will prove it because I have next to me an EPC contractor which is willing to bet and guarantee that that technology will work. And by the way, if this is not enough, I can only put some money as equity to prove that I am the first one to believe in it. Now, this formula proves to be very successful whenever you have a new technology and you don't want to follow the quite expensive route of deploying your own pilot plant and then be able to show to the client.
Especially if you want to do that on a commercial scale, then it becomes very expensive.
Very expensive. There have been a lot of casualties in this sense in the past 5 years. So we have been able to escape this trap, and I think that the idea of being very close to the E&C part of the business, the execution part of the business, is a tremendous selling point.
Okay, so is that also then it sounds like a vision for NEXTChem, in a sense, enabling the energy transition as a vision. I think it's also a buzzword. Everybody enables the energy transition, or is doing something green or sustainable, or is that the only secret sauce that NEXTChem has in terms of the integration and the skin in the game, both with the backing of an EPC contractor and putting a value and a investment in projects, or is there more to it?
There's slightly more. I would say that what these past few years are teaching all of us is that the energy transition will not be done all at the same time, everywhere in the world, and through the same technologies or vectors. We are seeing a world where geopolitics have never been so difficult to understand. Everybody's moving with its own strengths and resources, irrespective of what the neighboring country is doing. Look at the new stances of the US versus China and India versus Europe versus the Sun Belt, so whoever is able to exploit natural resources. So there will be technologies that we will be able to sell in an area and that will not be in demand in another, and vice versa. Which means that on top of the long-term trajectory we have in mind, we also have to be extremely knowledgeable about the local circumstances in which we work. And this is why we are reinforcing, and in my opinion, we will need to keep on reinforcing our regional presence. You know, we have teams here and there in the world, and they are proving to be very useful in originating new opportunities.
Okay. Does that also, because I can imagine that we still didn't get to the numbers of the initial question in terms of amount of countries that we're in, but it's a global operating company. with a lot of diverse cultures. Do those regional offices also have an impact, or I think, or how do they have an impact on the culture of NextCam? Because that's not just the technologies, regulations are different in all of those regions, but people are different.
Yeah. People are different. The way to approach a different geography is different. There's something which I did not experience in my previous life with MAIRE and the traditional way of doing business, which was very much focused on those geographies which were rich in gas. Mm-hmm. This was the case for almost all the companies within the group in the traditional space. With the energy transition, a number of countries which are not rich in fossil fuels are becoming targets of our offers. Mm-hmm. And it is whether because they have natural resources, whether they have agricultural resources, which in the broader sense of the old way of doing energy was not considered. But nowadays we are looking at Kazakhstan not only for its gas, but for its vast land and the ability to generate biofuels for the sake of then getting to sustainable aviation fuel. We have Africa, which is a land of opportunity, and we know that it will be the fastest growing market in the next 20 years. We have South America, which is not, for Stanley Carbon it is, but not for the group. It has never been a major market, and there are tremendous opportunities there, not only for biofuels, but also for the most recent gas findings, which they want to treat in a more sustainable way than other countries. But I can enlarge these examples to a number of other geographies which are surprising us in the way they are looking at the energy transition.
So how is NextCam then, let's say, shaping the energy transition? Because I think regulations are different and each country has its own requirements and resources.
Yeah.
To what extent can that be influenced?
Okay, you mentioned something which is regulation, which is a very delicate topic. Us in Europe, because I am, both of us are at least living in Europe, although we have presence in the world. But in Europe, the regulations have not been successful enough to give the energy transition a clear trajectory going forward. For the same reason I was mentioning before, we have all gone in the same direction on day one, as if that was the way to do. We forgot that there are a number of intermediate steps that need to be done, and the journey is much longer than originally expected.
It's a transition.
It is. Yeah. And regulation can be extremely useful and extremely damaging at the same time. First of all, we are in the business of commodities. So a regulation in an area of the world has an impact globally, mm-hmm. and vice versa. So if a regulation, that same regulation is not adopted worldwide, and we're talking of a commodity, then you will have a displacement of those economies and industries that will have to abide to that regulation versus other geographies that are not
You see a change in how markets trade and how trades route changes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And only the very few commodities like sustainable aviation fuel. Let's look at two commodities where regulation in a specific geography can have a worldwide impact. Sustainable aviation fuel and methanol. They are both used for the aviation industries or for the shipping industries, both global businesses. Mm-hmm. If you fly an airline, sooner or later, unless you are a local player, you will have to land somewhere in Europe because your passengers will. And if you do that, you'll have to pay the fines if you are not able to mix your kerosene fuel with 2 percentage points of sustainable aviation fuel, which is homeopathic doses, but is asking any international carrier to look into it.
And it's the start of a new industry.
Exactly. And that's the same for methanol. But then if you apply a certain regulation on commodities which are not so geographically widespread and global, then you can have a real misplacement of and displacements of certain industries. So regulations have to be such that everybody in the commodities business have to abide to it. Or better not have any regulation and let the private markets do the game. We will take longer, you will need to invest more in technologies, but then it's better to be on a level playing field than having disadvantages here and there. So regulation can be a great advantage or a great disadvantage.
So then how important is innovation? Because you say, well, let's remove, if you remove all the regulations and just let the market figure it out, then innovation becomes a driving force for any change?
It does. It does. Regulation can be a boost for innovation, because if you apply the grants and the subsidies not to a specific infrastructure, which will give you the result on day one, but on the technology, which will allow a number of infrastructures to be deployed, you are much better off. You have reached the goal. What we have done, especially in Europe, is to subsidize physical investments with technologies which are not yet market ready. So that's.
Do you have an example of that?
We are involved in a number of projects where we have been able to obtain grants. And these grants, in some cases, are meant to help the deployment of a physical infrastructure. But then if the technology, without the grant, is not able in a short time frame to be able to be replicated in other infrastructures, you have just lost taxpayers' money.
Yeah.
So I don't have examples that we can apply to us, because the only relevant grant we have obtained is for the gasification of waste. The grant in this case is helping a physical deployment of the plant, but as you always know, the first of a kind have certain diseconomies that need to be taken into account. But in general, I would say that the real secret of public funding should get into and should be concentrated on technologies development more than on physical assets. And I think we started the wrong step by deploying a lot of money. You will remember the amount of the PNRR or the IRA in the United States. We're talking about billions to be deployed for physical infrastructure, and a relatively smaller portion to the development of technology. So to go back to your question, is innovation important? Yes. But the feeling I have, and I'm not an engineer, so you will take my words for what they are, is that the time to market of everything has shortened so much in recent years that the idea of developing a technology for 10 years to come is no longer valid. It used to be, and it's no longer. If you think of what I hear in the energy panels we have been going to in the past 6 months, it used to be energy for artificial intelligence. Nowadays is artificial intelligence for energy saving. So we have quickly gone from the concept of we need to deploy more electrons because we need to feed the big data, from how artificial intelligence can contribute more than the energy needed to make it work, to make the energy more efficient.
To add value. So then, as a former CFO, how do you mix those two perceptions? Because you say, well, innovation is important, but let's say the 10-year return on investment is no longer in today's market, but still innovations require a lot of investment. So how do you balance that in terms of capital allocation?
We have a mixed formula, whereby we, first of all, when deploying our own new technologies, we tend to ask our people to start not from TRL 1, so to be able to...
Technology readiness level?
1, but 5 or 6, to be able to be to the market in a maximum of 3 or 5 years, not more than that.
Okay.
And how do you start from TRL 5 or 6? Most times by buying someone who has deployed at small scale some technologies.
Okay.
And this is happening everywhere, with the only exception of Stamicarbon, which has a long history of deploying its own technologies, but everywhere in the other companies within the group.
Okay, and then for reference, for people that do not know, when can you sell something in the market? At what TRL level?
TRL 8 or 9.
8 or 9.
The maturity is such that you can show your client that that technology is working, if not at industrial scale, at a scale which is big enough to be replicable at industrial scale.
Okay, so basically it's a scale from 1 till 10, 10 being it's completely...
It's 1 to 9.
Oh, okay.
1 is when you enter a garage or a laboratory with an idea, and 9 is when you have a pilot plant, which is not a small one, which is, the lowest dimension of an industrial scale, which is already functioning.
Yeah. So then when it drops out of the scale, let's say the 10 it's a commercial available product, then it's no longer research, it's there.
It's there. And consider that within NEXTChem at this point in time, we have more than 30 technologies which are already marketable. They are already accepted by the clients as validated technologies.
And then you also have the Green Innovation District in Rome.
Yes.
Can you briefly touch upon that?
Sure. It's an initiative that is coming through our founder and shareholder, and I think it's a good idea. It's the idea of having a single point, a single venue, where all the technologies can convene, all the technologies which are under development. But the real purpose of that center is to create a place where third party can join. So we have a number of small and mid-sized enterprises who were missing an environment where they could find process engineering companies like we are, universities or the like. So it's open to the public. And it's under construction. It will be ready sometimes in 2026. So as a matter of fact, we will see how it goes. It is also the first attempt, if I may, to have a common place. The big advantage and disadvantage of NEXTChem is that it is the combination of a number of pre-existing entities. And when you have a group of companies that are merged together, you have the benefit of diversification, you have the benefit of a multicultural environment, you have the benefit of cross-fertilization of ideas, but then you need to create a common brand, a common identity. And initiatives like the Green Innovation District, which will host all the technology developments from within the group, so a place to meet and look at technologies all together.
And synergize.
And synergize is definitely an example of how to create a brand identity.
And how would you then describe the NEXTChem culture? Because you say it's a mix of a lot of entities, a lot of different cultures, different countries. How would you describe the NEXTChem culture?
Well, that's the most critical question, because I don't think we are yet at a point in time where we have a common culture. Okay.
How would you like it to be? Maybe let me rephrase it.
Well, first of all, you need to share the long-term goals. If we are all aligned on the long-term goals, then we are definitely half the way down the road. The second one is to be able to respect a culture which is not your culture, because otherwise you don't want to impose a single way of doing things.
Diversity.
Exactly. You want to maximize and optimize whatever is the best in every culture. The third one is that you have relatively established companies. KT Tech has been there for more than 50 years. Stami Carbon has been there for ages. Concert has a relatively old history. But then you have companies which were born 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. So in a way, you have very deep corporate identities with companies which are still in search of a corporate identity. And all these has to merge in certain values which are at mother company level at NEXTChem. So it's a big challenge. It's probably one of the challenges where we will have to concentrate more.
Yeah. But it sounds like, if I listen to what you've been saying for the past half hour, it's entrepreneurship, it's diversity, it's innovation, it's an open-mindedness for
open-mindedness. You're right. It's challenging the conventional. What we are experiencing in these very days is that the market is changing so fast. there are companies who are seeing competitors where they could not expect these competitors to come. China is everywhere. India is proving to be another fertile ground for new initiatives and new technologies. The world is moving, at different speed, but everywhere. And the tools are available to everybody. AI is available to everybody. So we will all be able to compete, if not with capital, but at least with the same means. Mm-hmm. And the world will be a much larger place to compete in. So it's thrilling, in my opinion, it's exciting. I think we should all enjoy a different mindset. Let me tell you that this is true in a number of places within the company. You still have people who will tell you, we have always done the same. We have always done this. And it worked in the past 40 years. Well, it will not work in the next 20.
Yeah.
And this is everywhere. It's not only NEXTCHEM or the sectors we are in. The challenges we are facing with a new, stimulating, always changing environment are touching all the sectors. There are no certainties, which is, in my opinion, the fun part of our job.
It's also part of the challenge. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and energizing. Yes. Oh, okay. Well, I see we need to start to get to the end of the podcast. So let me get back to my first question in terms of you said you are a numbers guy. Can you describe NEXTCHEM in numbers in terms of employees, countries? We've talked about some of those elements already, but
well, we are about 700 people, plus or minus, in these days, which is already a substantial number. You're talking of clearly mostly engineers, but then you have all the other specialties which have joined. We're talking of more than 14 legal entities, and the number might grow going forward for the reason I was mentioning before. In our business plan, we have more than 1 billion to be spent in the next 10 years, clearly not only in one shot, to look at opportunities which are able to complete our product offering. And this could also be the competition, because sometimes it's better to buy than to fight. Companies may grow over time. Nationalities, I don't have the precise number, but if I look at the number of nationalities in Stami Carbon, I would say we are definitely, how many?
Yeah, I think it's over 35, somewhere 35, 40. So I think there will be more outside of Stami Carbon.
We're 40 plus. I would say 40 plus. So a considerable number of nationalities. I think, we look, I hardly reason upon the geography of someone who's there to be hired. I mean, we have seen really, in these days, I definitely look more at his or her experience more than where he or she comes from. But at the same time, an enlargement in nationality is proving a very successful tool to understand the nationality. I'll make an example. We have a Turkish colleague. I will not mention the name because we have many Turkish colleagues, but she has helped us understanding the logics of that country. This is has not to do with NEXTCHEM, it's more on the E&C side of the business. To the extent that Turkey has become a procurement center at a much faster pace than we would have otherwise done without local understanding, not knowledge. Yeah. And this is true. I could make thousands of examples in this case.
So the open mind is combined with the diversity.
Yes.
And then in terms of amount of offices, amount of countries that NEXTCHEM is located?
Yeah, well, we have 3 main centers in Italy, so Milan, Roma, and Catania, because Catania will become a relevant part of our business. We are hiring very good engineers at very good rates if compared to Northern Italy or Northern Europe. We have Sittard, we have 2 locations in Germany, we have people in Abu Dhabi, we have people in clearly India, in Mumbai, we have people in China, we have people in the States, we have 2 teams, one for Southern for South America and the other one for North America. So I would say we are definitely more than 10, 12 locations worldwide.
Okay, that's an impressive global presence.
Yeah.
And to finalize, if we would do this interview again in 5 years, what's success?
Where would I love to be in 5 years from now? You know that we have potentially a journey that will give NEXTChem full independency with the listing of the group in the stock markets. We will get to that as and when the market will be ready to reckon the right value to all our group of companies. I would like to be at a point in time where I don't need to explain where someone has said something and the other one has misunderstood what he's saying. So at a point in time where we find a common language.
Okay.
And I would love to get there way before than 5 years. So I'm really working on that extensively. And clearly in 5 years, I see if the markets we are looking at are the right ones, and I think they are, we will be at a much better stage in terms of economics, which in a way is always good to have, because they will allow us to do more and to exploit more.
Yeah. All right. Is there anything you would like to add as a closure?
I would say we have gone through the list of a lot. We have gone through a lot. It's been an interesting conversation. I really let me thank you for carrying on this type of exercise. Sometimes allow me to say I know a number of persons, but it's easier that a wider number of persons know me because I'm often on the press or often on. Now, what I really lack is exercises like this that could involve our young people. Okay. We have had some exercises involving all our young engineers in their own meetings outside of the office space to discuss certain technology topics. I would like to be able to see them from the outside, not disturbing them, but being able to understand, the real base of our groups, what is made from. I have 20 or 30 people, not more, that I ordinarily interact with. But there's so much more to
submerged in the company.
Please do this type of exercises and take 3 or 4 young graduates which have joined us from a couple of years, not more, and let us understand from them what they would do. Yes, this group is there to stay, no doubt. And I'm in my late 50s. I do expect to see who will take the lead very soon, as a matter of fact. And I keep on listening to the ideas and the suggestions of young people with great interest. So I would very much welcome this type of exercises with the real backbone of our group.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining as well. And also, thanks a lot for all our listeners to the first episode of NEXTEpisode. And we will be back with a more extended deep dive in different type of technologies. Thank you for tuning in.
NEXTEpisode.